In the Austrian town of Amstetten, a mother suspected of criminal neglect was being questioned by police. She told them she had a story to tell, but only if she never had to see her father again. What Elisabeth Fritzl had to say would shock the world.
She was given this assurance, and then, without a break, in a mere 2 hours, she gave an account of the 24 years she spent in the cellar. Well, it still sends shivers down my spine.
The full horror began emerging of the dark secrets buried beneath number 40 Eibstrasse. The 24 years of Elisabeth Fritzl's life underground covered just a few sheets of paper. She told police that her own father had imprisoned her since the age of 18 in a purpose-built cellar. He'd raped her repeatedly, and she'd given birth to 7 children. On April the 27th, the police went to Joseph Fritzl's house. The front set on an ordinary street, the back set amongst leafy suburban gardens. And sure enough, the full horror was revealed. From information given to us by the police, we've recreated the living conditions she experienced for nearly a quarter of a century. Fritzl had built a perfectly concealed bunker in which to imprison his own daughter and their children. Down the cellar stairs and through a warren of rooms, there were 8 locked doors before reaching the living area. The final door was concealed behind a shelving unit. There was no natural light and little air. Inside their tiny prison there was a kitchen, a bathroom and a living area. And beyond this, 2 bedrooms.
Ich habe einmal selbst dieses Kellerverlies, dieses Gefängnis besucht und bin durchgegangen.
I went to see this dungeon, this prison for myself once. I went through it and was very glad to be able to leave. The environment in this room, where the ceilings were kept very low, around 6 foot, the highest point, the environment was anything but pleasant, because everyday living, personal hygiene, etc., must have kept the level of humidity high. If we all sat down and attempted to capture 30 years in a few lines, or a brief report, or even in a slightly longer documentary, we wouldn't succeed. Because I believe that in those 24 years, life must have felt as if it lasted 10 times as long as real time.
All around number 40, Joseph Fritzl had created a natural barricade, and his nearest neighbours were 3 gardens away. Immediately next door, the old lady had moved into care. Next to her, the couple spent their weeks in Vienna, and the 3rd house along was home to Herbert and Regina Pentz.
Ja, was soll man hier merken? Es ist, alle Gärten sind offen und beim Herrn Fritzl ist alles verdeckt.
Well, what are you meant to spot round here? All the gardens are open, while Herr Fritzl's is all concealed, built up, and the few open spaces are covered by trees and bushes. You can't see anything. The neighbour wanted to prune the hedge last year, but Herr Fritzl said no, leave it. And if someone doesn't want people seeing into their garden, you have to accept it. Other than that, you can't see anything.
Dann muss man es akzeptieren. Und sonst sieht man nichts.
People speak of a family who kept themselves to themselves.
Aber Familie Fritzl bei irgendwelche Gartenfeste, wie man es früher.
The Fritzl family never came to any of the garden parties we used to have around here. They never came. So in the end, basically, people stopped inviting them, because everyone knew that the Fritzls would never come to any kind of party.
Kommen sowieso nicht zu irgendeinem Fest.
Joseph Fritzl had been a successful engineer, and DIY was a natural hobby for him.
Herr Fritzl war da selber immer fleißig. Wir haben da oft die Mischmaschine laufen hören. Herr Fritzl hat weitgehend.
Herr Fritzl was always very hard-working. We often heard the noise of the cement mixer. I think that Herr Fritzl did most of the building work himself. We thought that he was adding on an extra room to rent out, or something like that.
Natürlich mitgekriegt.
According to the police, Fritzl was for many years planning a whole underground complex ready to imprison his daughter. His cover? He was building an extension to the family home in order to take in tenants.
Wir wissen heute ganz genau, dass in diesem Haus ein Teil von dem alten Keller sozusagen.
Today we know with certainty that part of the old cellar in the old house was kept back as a reserve, so to speak, and that this new house suddenly gained a small space of 30 to 35 square meters without anyone noticing. We're now proceeding on the assumption that he'd already settled upon the plan to build his own personal Reich as early as 1978 and to start a relationship with his pretty daughter Elisabeth in the cellar.
Elisabeth im Keller eine Beziehung zu beginnen.
Joseph Fritzl has a history of violent sexual abuse. Recorded on microfiche in the archives are reports from 1967 of his confession to the rape of a 24-year-old woman at knife point. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison.
We knew nothing, and I can't investigate matters of which I know nothing. In Austrian law, there's a statute of limitations.
In the years that followed, Joseph Fritzl presented himself as the strong family man in this devoutly Catholic country. His favourite daughter Elisabeth was the fourth child of 7 from his marriage to Rosemary. There were 5 girls and 2 boys. The father ruled the roost. According to those who knew her during school days, Elisabeth found the atmosphere at home oppressive. One of her closest friends at secondary school was Christa Woldrich. She speaks of a teenager who was reserved when speaking about life outside the classroom.
I did get the impression, though, that she felt more comfortable at school than at home, and that sometimes she went quiet when it was time to go home again. It was the same for both of us. It was like a silence descending.
Andreas Krutzik was Elisabeth's first serious boyfriend.
She really confided in me. I knew that she was under pressure from her parents, and that she ran away from home when she was 14 or 15, and that she was closer to some of her other siblings. There was a trusted sister whom she stayed with often.
Before she disappeared in August 1984, Elisabeth had tried to run away to Vienna on at least one previous occasion. She's told police that her father's abuse had started when she was just 11. She'd kept it secret.
The abuse at 11 years. I've thought about it a lot recently, whether I noticed anything back when we were at school. Now it's easier to understand why she didn't talk about boys or about sex. Now, with hindsight, I understand why she didn't talk about certain things, or why she was distant and quiet. But we didn't realize it then. You just think, oh, you're having a bad day.